groupie. I never planned on being that. It's just one of those things that happened because I was in the right place at the right time, the right age, the right city, the right everything. Music lover, extreme. Fell in love with Elvis at age 8. Changed my entire life. I bought the record Jailhouse Rock, and the flip side was Treat Me Nice. And I played that thing so many times. My mom would say, would you just turn that off? And it was all about treating a rock god nice, right? So it just went through my bloodstream at a very early age. Elvis was demanding to be treated nice. So I wish I could have done that with Elvis. I was a little young. But I would have if I could have. So as I got a little older, I went on to meet other idols of mine. I was a fanatic for Dion. And Dion, who's Dion? Did someone say who's Dion? Okay. Dion was the early Dion and the Belmonts. Then he went solo, and he had a very big hit record with Run Around Sue. And later, if you remind me, I'll tell you a Robert Plant Dion story that is very, very touching, that people don't know about. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to read from this book, I'm With the Band. It was a huge bestseller when it came out, and it's still in print, thank goodness, and I still, thank God, can pay my mortgage with the money that comes in from it. And I have written 3 other books, and I'm writing a 3rd memoir right now. I'm a memoirist. I don't know how you quite say that word. But I also teach writing classes here in Toronto, and a lot of my writing dolls are here. Raise your hand. Raise your hand. My writing dolls. So let me know if you're interested in attending class, if you don't know about it, after the reading. And also I'm going to take a Q&A. Anybody who wants to ask me anything besides what I told you, you cannot ask me. The size of a member, or who was the best F-U-C-K. Okay, I was a huge Stones fan. I was just the ripe age when Mick Jagger came along to play with myself. Am I allowed to say that here? And he sort of encouraged me to do that. So I'm going to read about my early obsession with Mick, and then later when I actually encountered him. The month of waiting for the Stones' arrival increased my wanton desire to feel those gigantic lips on mine. I started writing porno things in my diary for the first time. Someday I will touch and feel him, I know it. Mick, my dear, dear penis. I brazenly created in pink and red oil colors my concept of what his balls might look like. Of course, I've never seen balls. I turned it into Mr. Gifford as a modern art project and got an A. Of course, he had no idea what it was. So I knew in my heart that it was what Mick Jagger's balls looked like. They came to Hollywood on May 11th, 1965, the same day I was thrown out of school for looking absurd. I can still see my mom trying to explain to the lumpy old VP about the new look in teen fashion. Victor was proud of me. Now, Victor Hayden is still a good friend of mine. He was Captain Beefheart's cousin. For those of you who don't know who he is, you should know who he is. Captain Beefheart, very avant-garde, rock god, crazy maniac. And Victor was his cousin, and he also later was in the Magic Band.
The Mascara Snake.
The Mascara Snake. Fast and bulbous.
Bulbous also came.
Very good. Okay. Vic and I hurtled ourselves to RCA, hoping they might be there recording, and incredibly they were. We waited around panting until they came out, and as if I were in a zomboid trance, I followed Mick into the parking lot. As he got into the rented station wagon, he turned and asked me to help him out of the parking space. I was so enthralled that he had spoken to me. And just being in his presence turned me into such a gibbering, slack-jawed dildo brain that I had him bump into 2 different cars before he made it out of there. I'm afraid I didn't make a very good first impression. Dazed, I walked right into Keith as he ambled to the car. Even in my bewildered condition, I swore he gave me a sexy look. I wrote in my diary, he looked me over. Sexy. And what did he see? A skinny, shivering wreck of a teenager, truly petrified during her daring rock and roll deed. They asked us for directions to the Ambassador Hotel, and Victor stood there gaping. Mick leaned out of the window and said, "No, I'm serious." So we escorted them up Wilshire Boulevard with satisfaction blaring on the radio as I gazed into the rearview mirror at my steaming photograph in the steaming flesh. So Mick Jagger was like my number 1 on my I want to have sex with list. And it did take me a while, and by the time we actually encountered each other, I was already in the GTOs and had my own following and my own reputation. And so I'm going to read about that, what happened then, okay? October 22nd, 1968. I did something, these are actual diary entries that I included in my book, because it kind of gives you an immediacy about what was going on then. I did something, or shall I say I didn't do something, and I'm wondering why not. I think I'll wonder about it for a long time. Mercy and I went to see the Burrito Brothers at the Corral in Topanga Canyon, twirling and spinning together. Jagger, Richards, Watson, Wyman came walking in, and the roof lifted off the dilapidated old dump. We carried on like nothing astounding was going on and kept dancing to the burritos. Luckily, I had on a long black velvet dress, cut real low, my tiny little bosom, and lots of chi-chi rhinestones. I could feel his eyes upon me, and I rocked out even more. Graham noticed what was going on from the stage and said into the microphone, "Watch out for Miss Pamela. She's a beauty, but she's tender-hearted." He was warning me and Mick at the same time, I think. My sweet Graham was so thrilled that his new best friend Keith was there to see him play. Mick came up to Mercy in between sets and said, "Introduce me to your beautiful lady friend." Then he kissed my hand and bowed. Those lips. People ask me, how did you meet those guys? Okay, that's how. That's how I met them. It was a very, very, very different world when the Rolling Stones would come into a tiny little club and just sit there and be the Stones right in front of you. You know, there's just nothing like that going on anymore. So I'm very, very grateful I got to experience this stuff. Mick invited Mercy and me back to the huge house the Stones were renting in Laurel Canyon, and number 1 on my far-fetched fuck list was literally within my grasp. Mick, Keith, and I sat around the fireplace, listening to Mercy predict profundities through her beaten-up tarot cards. She carried her cards everywhere, hoping to bump into the likes of Keith Richards, spread them out on the rug in a triangle, explain the tower and the hanged man, and create answers for unasked questions. I didn't write this here, I don't know why, but she warned them against Altamont. She said, "Do you guys have some kind of event coming up that's unusual and kind of unpredictable and secret?" And they said, "Yeah, we're doing this Altamont gig." And she said, "Don't do it." So Mercy's pretty good. She's pretty good. Okay. After the reading, which went on for half an hour, Keith picked up the guitar and Mick sang, "I followed her to the station, a suitcase in my hand." I wish I could recreate that for you, but I can't. I entered rock and roll heaven and was hanging out on cloud 9. My heart was beating below my waist, just like it did at the Long Beach Arena. That was an earlier part of the book where I said the first time I saw Mick, my heart actually started beating in my vagina. And I went, wow. Okay. Mick and I danced around the living room to the Stones' unreleased album, Beggar's Banquet, and when he asked for my opinion, I was tongue-tied, but smiled like I had written a rave review. Within seconds, he was right in front of me, holding my arms down at my sides, kissing me so hard that I knew I would have swollen lips for a week. It was good. It was good. He knows how to make out like nobody's fucking business. 6 a.m. continued. After he kissed me, he began to caress my face with his lovely hands. He came on and on and on to me. Delicious, huge kisses from that amazing mouth. Caresses everywhere. I was melting, but holding back. Terribly shy I was. "You're shy," he said. He couldn't believe it. I went to the pool to put my toes in the water to look at the full moon. Mr. Jagger followed, kissing me and tangling my hair. "I'm going to bed, Miss Pamela." Sexiest voice I've ever heard. "Have a nice sleep." "Do you want to come to bed?" "I don't know." "Do you want the week to think it over?" "Yes." Silence. "Well, do you want to come to bed?" "No." I told him no. Is that awesome? Amazing. So amazing that I had to write it word for word. And where was Jimmy Page when I told Mick Jagger no? Probably fucking some cunt. Anyway, I was not sleeping with Mick because I was in love with Jimmy Page, and he told me he loved me, and we were in this very deep, poignant relationship. But not really, I found out later. He was telling all kinds of other girls the same kind of groovy stuff. Okay, I want to read more about Mick because it's really hot. About the when he kissed me on the thighs. Where is that? Oh, well, I'll just tell you. He started. He was, he took me out by the pool. And we used to visit them a lot. Mercy and I were hanging out with the Stones, and right in their heyday, Mick was like beating the stage with that long red scarf, and he had the Leo sign. I actually got him at the peak of Jaggerness, so I'm very lucky. But at this point, I was still telling him no. And he took me out to the pool and started like making out with my entire self. That's what he does. He's not like any regular kind of make out or love or anything. He started at my calves and started all the way up my thighs and just kissing, slobbering, so crazy. So the next day I had hickeys, crazy, big fat ones all over my thighs. That was pretty awesome. And the feeling of it too, when they're heavy. Who has been hickeys on their thighs? See? Not many people, right? The feeling is so incredible. You can like feel the blood being sucked out of different parts of your vehicle into your thighs. It's really far out. And then you look down and it's Mick Jagger doing it. Okay, and it was good. It was good. Okay. So, October 30th. Wonders never cease. I just left Mick still saying no. This time he begged me. He even said, "Promise me you'll stay just once." Over and over again. Kisses and caresses, more gentle this time. I even overheard him ask Mercy how he could convince me to stay with him. When other people are asked to leave by big roadies, we're asked to stay on. And I feel so privileged. Mick was supposed to sleep with this chick tonight, but he was with me every second. They finally had a conversation and she split. I guess he was convinced he could get me to stay. He said, "You're pretty, so pretty. The prettiest girl I've met here, and I really mean it." I think he did at that moment. Mercy told him that Jimmy Page was my boyfriend, and I'm sure he snickered. He probably knows what Jimmy gets up to and thinks I'm being a prude. Oh well. So that's some Mick Jagger stuff. There's a lot more in there. And I thought I would read you some maybe Jim Morrison stuff. Jim Morrison was a very early person in my life. I was still a virgin. And now, I do actually have a few regrets. They are regrets for things I did not do. I don't regret anything I did. But I could have slept with Jim Morrison, and I could have been de-virginized by Jimi Hendrix. And I didn't do it. What are you gonna do? We all have regrets, right? Or regrets we didn't do. I do not believe in regrets except for things that you passed up. And those are a couple things I passed up that, I kind of wish I'd done. Okay. I've got to preface this. I was spending a lot of time in Laurel Canyon. I had a girlfriend who lived right behind the Country Canyon store. And as much as I liked her as a person, I've got to be honest here, I was only hanging out with her because she lived behind the Country Canyon store in Laurel Canyon. I'd been hanging around the canyon house for a couple weeks when I awakened one day to the glorious sound of the doors seeping in under the window shade in the womb room where I was sleeping at 2 in the afternoon. I knew they'd recorded an album, but it still hadn't been released. Who had a copy? Who within 100 yards of my presence had a copy? Preparing myself for the blast of perpetual sunlight, I emerged from my blankets to seek out the owner of the record. I was thrilled to realize that the music was coming from the green shack house to my left and down a few dozen precarious steps. In Laurel Canyon, that meant right next door. I threw on a little purple dress and started down the steps to make the acquaintance of the ultra-hip neighbor who had a pre-release copy of the Doors' first album. I decided to peek in a window first so I wouldn't catch this hip person in the middle of an act of intimacy brought on by the sensual moans of Jim Morrison. I tiptoed onto the rickety porch, looked into the kitchen, and clapped my hand over my mouth to capture the scream that threatened to shatter the staggering moment. Jim Morrison in the flesh was wearing nothing but his black leather pants, was digging around in the fridge, humming along with The End. Mother, I want to... Oh my God! I pinched myself, peeked again for the sheer joy of it, and scrambled up the stairs to decide what to do next. He moves, he breathes, he lives next door. By the time Sandy got home from work, I was a puddle on her kitchen floor and had reached the place where Carlos Castaneda only dreams about. In one of my semi-lucid moments, I told her about her infamous, soon-to-be-famous neighbor, and she suggested I knock on the door and introduce myself like a good neighbor should. In my bonzo condition, I said, why didn't I think of that? I don't know how long it took me to get down the steps. The gongs were always bonging away in my brain. When I came to my extremely sensual senses, I was in the middle of a perfect back bend on Jim Morrison's tatty oriental rug, my purple velvet mini dress completely over my head, his red-headed girlfriend glaring down at me. I expected Rod Serling to appear in the doorway to narrate this ultimate in uh-oh moments. I don't know, some of you probably don't know who Rod Serling is. He's the Twilight Zone guy. Trying to regain a drop of composure, I stood up out of my back bend and offered the redhead a spot of Trimar. I forgot to mention Trimar was a drug I was sniffing in those days, that very short-lived drug. One of the Iron Butterfly, the bass player, worked in a hospital during the day, and he was like mopping some of this stuff up and realized it just really got him stoned, and he started smuggling it out in quart jars. And it turned out later on it was actually liquid angel dust. And it's what angel dust was created out of. It was like they did blocks, saddle blocks for pregnant women. I mean, it was a hardcore drug. And I hadn't even smoked pot yet. I thought I was in the clear because it was a clear liquid. How could it hurt me? Right? Okay. Trying to regain a drop of composure, I stood up out of my back bend and offered the redhead a spot of Trimar, avoiding the Lizard King who hovered in the corners whispering, "Get it on." And that's, Jim Morrison always said two things. He either said, "Get it on," or "Suck my mama." These are two things he said when he wasn't sure what to say or had nothing else to say. These are the two things he always said. She told me I had better leave, and I didn't even remember arriving. Bowing and scraping, I backed out the door and ran back up the stairs, berating myself profusely for being such an idiot. I should have known he didn't live alone. Not that it would have made one bit of difference in my cockeyed condition. My ears had just stopped ringing when there was a noisy commotion down in the greenhouse. We heard a shrill voice screaming, "Don't you dare go up there!" And then Jim was at the door, smiling sheepishly, a glint in his eye. He was very interested in my quart of Trimar, accepted my handkerchief, and inhaled deeply. Social amenities were out the window for the next few hours. We sniffed the stuff, lolling around the floor, laughing at everything until the bottle was dry. The good thing about Trimar was that you got no hangover from it, no headache, or any kind of come down, but you definitely wanted more. By this time it was the middle of the night and I was unable to obtain a second bottle, so Jim said a pleasant good night and thanked Sandy and me for the wonderful hospitality. I was disappointed that he made no attempt to lay a hand on me, but I had hopes for the future, very near future as a matter of fact. The very next night the Doors were playing the Hullabaloo Club at Sunset and Vine, and I made sure to have a bottle of Trimar for the event. I had recently learned about sound checks and knew to be at the club between 4 and 6 o'clock when the band checked the monitors and instruments for the evening's entertainment. I went around to the back and perched blatantly on the steps of the backstage door, wearing a handmade black and white striped bell-bottom set, carrying my precious, pathetic muskrat jacket and an orange juice jar full of Trimar. I could hear the rest of the band tuning up inside and desperately hoped that Jim would arrive, sans redhead, scoop me up, take me backstage, and kiss my lips off, and that's exactly what happened. I had a couple of hankies in my homemade matching black and white bag, and during our make-out session we indulged wildly in the mind-damaging drug. I'd never kissed anyone while high before, and it was a revelation. I melted in his mouth like honey. My whole body became sticky liquid, and his fingers on my face pushed holes through my cheeks like they were on fire and left gaping holes where more honey gushed out. I was very, very stoned. I sat very still in a gooey puddle while he went on stage to check his groans, and when he came back, I was coming to my senses. He took me by the hand, and we climbed a rickety ladder up to a dingy, dark loft, where a bunch of old lighting equipment was rusting away, and taking my muskrat jacket, he laid it out on the wooden planks like a damsel was in distress. What a face he had. One of God's greatest gifts to rock and roll was that guy's face. And there he was right above me, his lips parted and his eyes closed, going in and out of focus as I inhaled my hanky. We rolled around up there for a timeless time until a familiar sound crept into our senses. Jim recognized it before I did and was making his way down the ladder as I sat up and heard the first few bars of Light My Fire. Was the sound check still going on? I pulled my clothes on, following Jim, and as he reached the microphone, I looked down to see the place full of wriggling, squirming audience. I was on stage with the Doors, my mouth hanging wide open, dragging my taggy coat with my half bottle of Trimar and my soppy hankies, too shocked to move. A kind Brody put his arm around me and escorted me to the wings, where I waited for Jim to collect me after the show, which to my delight he did. So that's that. Thank you. Thank you. I will take questions. Anybody has any questions for me? This is my favorite part, so please ask me whatever you want except for what I mentioned, and I'll be happy to answer. And I have photos and books, well, no more books, but I have photos back here to sell. I have a Playboy magazine for sale that I'm naked in. I got to write the article, that's why I did it. And I was 40, I just turned 40, and I thought, I'm going to be 40 years old in Playboy. God damn it. So anybody want to ask me anything? Do I have tips for groupies today? I know there are just as many groupies today as there have ever been, and just as many bands, but it's such a different world. You know, you cannot like walk into, like I said, the Topanga Canyon Corral and meet all the Stones. So I always suggest that you either get into the industry somehow, you know, interview people, photograph them. You know, even if you have a really cool blog, you can try to interview them, or start with a local band that you just know is going to be huge and work with them in that way. But no, it's impossible to do, like, to go meet Steven Tyler like I was able, you know what I mean? It's a different era. Wish I could say, I wish I had better advice. I'm sorry. Okay.
So who did it get de-virginized by?
Who did I get de-virginized by? I actually waited till I was 19. I was really hoping for love, looking for love. I really wanted to be in love. And it was a guy named Nick St. Nicholas. He was the bass player in Steppenwolf. And I really, really thought I was in love with this guy. And I gave him my hymen. And he really did not appreciate it, sadly. But I think that's probably a lot of our stories. Girls, right? How many times was your virgin hymen appreciated? Not that many times. I'm sorry. But yeah, it was Nick St. Nicholas, and we are still very close today, though. All of my living boyfriends, I'm still friendly with today.
Was that in a hotel room or apartment?
It was at his place on Hollywood Boulevard. He had red light bulbs. It was pretty great. It wasn't great the first time, I gotta say, but as I went along and slept with him several more times, it really got really, really good, and I became a sex fanatic, which is I still am today. Proud of it. Yes.
When did your groupie days end? Did you kind of see it coming? When did you end up doing out?
Well, my original groupie days ended when I met Michael Des Barres, my husband. And he's a singer, of course, he's a rock guy. So they never really ended, you know what I mean? But I was true blue to him. And when we broke up because of his cheating ways, I'm still a groupie.
Do you see the stones like on your past life?
Yes, Mick Jagger looks like 35 from the neck down and 100 from the neck up. He's someone I have not seen since back in the day when we had such a beautiful fling that went on for a couple of years. And I would like to run into him. I would like to see him. But when I remember I went to Europe, we were having this fabulous affair, and then I went to Europe and came back and called him. And when the phone was answered, it was Bianca, and she said, "Don't you ever call here again." So that's the last time I saw him. I would love to see him, actually. I think we could really have a lot of fun. I could look at him from the neck down and get pretty excited, I think. No, I'm just kidding. He's great.
Do you have any celebrity musicians that were kind of stalking you or wanted you when you didn't want them?
Jimmy Page stalked me.
Jimmy Page?
Yeah. Jimmy Page stalked me. I was not going to get involved with him because Cynthia Plaster warned me they were very dangerous. First time I ever saw their picture was on her wall. And I said, "Who are those cute guys?" And she said, that's Led Zeppelin, but be warned, they're very dangerous. So I had determined not to go near them. And so Jimmy Page I got messages from him before Facebook, before cell phones, before phone machines. He somehow got through postcards, messages that he wanted to meet me and be with me and everything. And I was still like, no. And then his roadie passed me messages in a club one night, and he said, "Meet me in room 605. And I said, "No." So, but he finally wooed me. He finally got to me. He got my phone number from somebody, and I actually picked the phone up, and he wooed me. So yeah, actually, Jimmy Page stalked me. I bet very few people can say that.
Do you have trouble with band members? Like 2 or 3 guys want to be with you, but you only want one?
The only time I experienced that kind of thing, though, because I'm really a one-guy girl, was Noel Redding from the Jimi Hendrix Experience was one of my main guys. And he suggested one night that we trade boys with Mitch Mitchell of the Hendrix Experience. And I liked Mitch. So I said, okay. That's the only time I ever did that. And it was really, really fun, yeah. I never had orgies, 3-ways, nothing. Yeah.
If you were born in the 90s,
Jack White.
Not a Justin Bieber or a Jack Kruger or a Dave Grohl or
No, Jack
Jack
White. Jack White is so, he's carrying it on, you know. I don't see many people carrying real live, bitchin', sexy, funky, hot rock and roll on except him. If you guys can give me some other options, let me know. But he is just it. I have a 26-page interview with him on my website. If you guys haven't read it, please read it. He read my book when he was 12. He's a smart guy.
You should see John Spencer if you haven't.
He's old. Come on, we're talking about the younger generation. John Spencer's cool. I interviewed him, but it was the hardest interview I ever gave in my life because no, I don't know. Terrifying.
But he's something on stage.
I've never seen him play, so I've got but he's 50. Am I right? Not right? He's 50. 50 is fine, but they were asking about modern.
What was your reaction to the film Almost Famous?
Almost Famous kind of stole my persona, and I felt ripped off. And I knew Cameron when he was 15-year-old putz, and he kind of stole me. And I felt bad about it, but he did give me an interview in my most recent book, Let's Spend the Night Together. He's the last chapter, and he describes all about writing it, trying to get it made, and who the girls were. It was a combination of me, B.B. Buell, and a real girl named Penny Lane. Penny, what's her real name, you guys? Trouble. But she called herself Penny Lane back then, and that's the first girl he had sex with, so she got the name Penny Lane. But the movie's okay, but I'll tell you right now that no hit band, would ever sit in a bus with a bunch of jerks and sing Tiny Fucking Dancer. This would not happen. I went, come on, man. But he captured, the groupie thing really well, except that no groupie I know would ever have killed herself over anybody. No real groupie. I really don't know. Robert always says that going to California was about me and Michelle Overman and another couple girls. And whenever he sings that, I mean, it's still... Okay, I've got to confess. Robert Plant actually came to visit me recently and showed up on my porch. In Bermuda shorts, okay? Opened the door. And there's a golden god on my porch. And no matter how many decades go by, it's still thrilling. It's still absolutely thrilling. But he told me that was written about me and Michelle Overman and a couple other girls. So, and my last boyfriend, Mike Stinson, he's an amazing country artist. He wrote 7 songs for me. So I know they're out there. Chris Hillman finally wrote a song for me called The One That Got Away in the Desert Rose Band. So there's probably others.
Is this movie going to be happening soon?
Oh yeah, I just wrote a screenplay for I'm with the Band. It's been sold so many times and written by other people, and the screenplay just sucked. One of them had Mercy levitating, reading her tarot cards, levitating. So anyway, I wrote the script, and I have a really cool producer, and I think it's actually going to happen. So that's exciting. Thank you. No, in fact, I'm very, 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 very single. And I would like to actually meet someone in my age group. I've decided, my last 2 boyfriends, my 2 main were 20 years younger, and that's fine. But now I think I'd like to meet someone kind of in my age group. But yeah, I'm single. Somebody back there just, yeah.
I was going to say, who would you want to play you?
Our dream is Dakota Johnson, because she is Don and Melanie's daughter, and I was the maid of honor at the wedding when she was pregnant with her second wedding for Don and Melanie, and I've known her all her life, and she's a wonderful actress. And she just got 50 Shades of Grey, so I don't know if we're going to actually get her, but that's my dream. And the idea of casting these cute guys, I may actually change my mind about someone in my age group when I get a load of some of these cute guys auditioning for Graham Parsons and Jimmy and Jim Morrison. Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
How do you find the reaction is when you explain to these new gentlemen about your past? Do you find they're intimidated or interested?
I think it's been a difficulty for me because yes, sometimes they're intimidated, sometimes they're judgmental. I'm gonna tell you a secret. I don't really tell many people this. I can't say who it is, but I was having a relationship with a very famous soul guy, a black guy, gorgeous guy, and we had one incredibly wild sexual night. And he said, "I got in there so deep, I think I saw Jimmy Page." Some people like it, some people are a little thrown off by it, but I don't know if it's been a good or a bad thing in my relationships, but I've been single for almost 3 years now. I can't tell who the guy is.
Was it Lenny Kravitz?
No, it wasn't Lenny Kravitz. You're warmer. Any other questions?
What's your best for example memory, and what's the best piece of musical
The best. What's the second part?
best piece of musical advice?
Musical advice? Wow. Okay, well let me answer the Frank Zappa first. Frank Zappa was my mentor. I was a governess for his children for a long time, but the best part about him was how he would encourage artists to go as far as they could, and he wanted to bring out the real deep, dark, crazy you, so he would do anything in his power to pull this out. He was like a master puppeteer. He would pull this stuff out, and that's how he got the GTOs to be so outrageous. I mean, we were outrageous anyway, but he made it, he enhanced it. So he believed in us and really set a tone that we could be as cool and outrageous and wonderful as he was, So yeah, the GTOs was a great experience for us. And
Did that record ever sell?
the record didn't sell that well because I don't think that many were printed. It was sort of we were performance artists before the term even existed. So I don't know. It's a very big collector's item now. It's like $300 on eBay. But musical advice right now, is that what you're asking? I don't know. You just have to be yourself. You just have to don't listen to what anyone else tells you. Don't take anyone's advice except feel it from yourself for yourself. There's too many people out there, I think, doing what they think should be done right now. There's so few bands, young bands that move me. Although there is a band I love called Nightmare and the Cat. If you guys want to take my advice or anything, look them up. They have an EP out. Capitol signed them. They have boys and girls in the band. Django James, the lead singer, is absolutely cosmically magical guy. He's 22, I think now, and his dad is Dave Stewart, and his mom is the Bananarama girl, and he's got it in his blood. His brother Sam is the guitar player. Nightmare and the Cat, amazing. So they are out there. There are bands out there doing what they believe they could do. It's harder for them though, even with their name and they slogged for a long time before they even got signed, and now Capitol's not even hyping them. So please look for them.
What music do you listen to when you get ready to go out or get pumped up? Like, what is your kind of like?
Bob Dylan. It's always Bob. Elvis and Dylan are the things I listen to the most. Elvis is for sexy, hot, naughty, wicked, etc. And Dylan is for if you're going to have a very deep, intimate conversation with somebody. Dylan, I would marry now. If he walked in here now, I would take off all my clothes and propose to him.
Have you ever met him?
Yes, I've met him. It's in my second book, the story about meeting him and getting to hang out with him and spend some time with him. He actually took my phone number one time and said he'd call me. And those were, before fucking phone machines or anything. And actually it wasn't, but my assistant at the time answered the phone, picked up the phone. And I was at the gym trying to be healthy. And I called in and I said, Did anybody call today? She said, no. Oh, wait a minute. Bob Dylan called? What? Bob Dylan called? Did he leave a number? He didn't leave a number, and he never called again. So,
Pretty much like the son, though. The son.
I have met his son, but you know, Bob is my god, actually. Bob Dylan changed the world for the better. He made rock and roll important. I don't care what anybody says. In fact, if someone wanted to date me and didn't like him, I would say this to that person. So that's how important Bob Dylan is. Any questions over here from my dolls? They get to ask me whenever they want. Any other questions?
I'm wondering if we could hear your Robert Plant Dion.
Oh, yeah. Well, you guys don't know who Dion is, but imagine your favorite singer was singing your favorite song live right in front of you. So this is what was happening. Robert Plant and I connected on Dion when I was dating Jimmy Page. Dating, I don't know if that's the right word. But when I was seeing Jimmy Page, Robert and I hung out a lot. And we connected on Dion. Dion's his favorite artist. So he was playing Vegas several years ago, maybe 7 or 8. And I went to see him and Dion. Dion was playing at the same night, the same time, and it was torture. So Robert said, why don't we go see Dion before I play? We can catch a few songs. So I went there with Robert, and we were sitting in the audience. And our favorite song, both of our favorite songs from Dion is called Love Came to Me. If you guys don't know about it, please go on YouTube. If you don't have the fucking dollar to download it, check it out on YouTube first. But it's called Love Came to Me, and it was like his 5th single. And Robert and I were sitting there together, and he started playing it. And we were just about to have to leave. So we sat and watched him play Love Came to Me. Both of us were weeping, crying, literally tears pouring. You know when you love music that much, what it does to you, it opens your entire solar plexus, your soul. You feel like you're soaring, nothing could go wrong. We were having that moment together. And right after the song, a roadie, Dion's roadie, came up and tapped Robert on the shoulder and said, do you want to see Dion after the show? And of course, he said, I can't, we have to leave right now. I'm performing myself right down the street, but please give this to Dion for me. And he took his tear and he put it on the roadie's hand. I was a witness to that exquisite rock and roll moment.
I've heard that you do a tour in LA.
Yes.
So is it like, oh, this is where Jim?
Yes, I do rock and roll. I'm with the band tours in LA. I have a really great driver, a guy named Kip Brown. He drives around town in a big van, and I take 10, 12 people around to all the sites, and I'm with the band. And we have such a blast. So if you ever get to LA, be sure to look on my website, myname.com, and you can see all the various things I do. But yes, I take people, rock fans, around to all the sites. I did all these crazy things. I take them to the apartment where Jimmy Page stayed with me, and Robert came over one day, and they were going through the liner notes and stuff for Led Zeppelin 2, and they were changing the order of the songs, and I mean, these things actually happened to me. so I take them around places like that. So if you ever get to LA, please come on that tour.
When you were a kid, what were you planning to be? And then once you became a groupie, what was your first business idea and how did you achieve it?
Well, I was in the GTOs. I wanted to be a girl, or a girl band. When that fell apart, I wanted to be a country singer because of Graham Parsons. And when that fell apart, I wanted to be an actress. So I did all kinds of crazy, tiny roles, and Keith Moon paid for my SAG card and everything. And then I got married, had a kid, and decided I would finally write my story. So, and then all kinds of wonderful things have happened because of it. I've written 4 books. I'm writing a 5th one. I've written a couple screenplays. I do lots of stuff now. I teach writing classes all over. I teach writing classes here in Toronto.
How old's your kid? What does he think of your legacy?
My son is 35. He's a Japanophile. He lived in Japan for a long, long time, and now he's back living up north. And he works in the video game industry. He translates Japanese books. He never really wanted to be in the music industry or anything. But he loves it. He loves my history. He read my book at 12. And he's a Stephen King nut, and he said, "Mom, you're as good as Stephen King." So that was good. I can actually write. I'm not just a groupie slut. Yes.
That was one of my questions, was what's your writing process like with books? Like how long does it take you to write?
It takes me about 18 months to write a book because I do a lot of other things too. But you know, I write 4 to 5 hours a day, and it's hard to kick your own ass and make yourself work. But you know, when I get a contract, it's easier. I'm really good with deadlines. But
And do you find that it just flows, or you do a lot of editing, or kind of
I write several pages, then I go back and edit, and then write several more and go back and edit. Everybody has a different process, you know. But you should come. You are coming to my writing class, yeah. So yeah. Anybody wants to sign up for my writing classes here next time? I'm pretty full this time. Just go to my website. It's women only, unfortunately. If I can get 10 men in Toronto to do a class, I'll do it. Kind of doubtful. I think I have to. Well, I have another little bit. Anybody want to ask me anything else? I'm going to sign pictures and sell them if anybody wants them. Please buy them from me. Yes. I can't hear you. I can't hear you, honey. You want to come around? People are, men are gathering it up back there.
How were the groupies back in the day? Did they all get along? Did you all know
The
each other?
GTOs or groupies?
Well, all the groupies in
Okay, how did groupies get along back then?
Yeah.
We had sort of a rivalry with the East Coast groupies. The West Coast groupies and the East Coast, yeah. They had claws in New York, you know. We were like, ah. So we sort of, you know, the bands would come and have girls on the East Coast and girlfriends on the West Coast, and there was like, you know. And there was like obviously no internet, no way to interact. But we called them groupie tom-toms. We knew who was seeing who and who was, you know, all that. Even way before, what was that one before Facebook? Yeah, MySpace. There was all these crazy, I went on there a few times and they all these groupie wicked shit going on. It was a little simpler, but somehow we knew who was seeing who. But on the GTOs always tried to make sure we were seeing different guys in the band and stuff. Or if we were going to see the same guy, it was all copacetic first. We had to arrange it first, yeah. Okay, thanks, Eddie.
Arguments and fights between GTO girls wanting a certain guy?
No, we were very careful. See, in those days, at least with us, the girls were more important than the boys. We really loved each other. The girls, we were there for each other 1,000,000%, and we saw each other through these rock and roll heartbreaks. And then girls like B.B. Buell came along. I mean, really, and Lori Maddox and Sable and all those girls who just didn't give a shit about the other girls. So it did change in the 70s, mid-70s. Thank you. I have a clothing line now, just launched, called Groupie Couture. GroupieCouture.com. We're selling vintage and all kinds of beautiful necklaces we create, and all kinds of things we come up with. And our first dress, Radiant Zap of Summer, is a copy of the dress in this book, Radiant Zap of Summer. And we just sold our first one. I was so excited. This dress here we copied in 100% silk, just gorgeous. So please buy one. So thank you.